Hi there, Nathan Patrick Taylor here. In this video, I'm going to take you through using the Get Data from Web feature inside Power BI. At the time of this video, the feature is in preview. It's not something that's generally available. So I'll take you through the process of enabling it and then scraping some data from a web page. I've done this in the past using R or Python. It's kind of a cumbersome process to go through it that way. This particular method makes it a little bit easier to pull data off of a web page in a dynamic way. So let's get into it here. I've got a template already built, my typical learning style here. I've got it pre-designed. I'll show you how it works. We'll tear it down and then we'll rebuild it as we go through the example. So I've got the actual shoe name, a model that I've parsed out using Power Query, the price from the web page, and also a tag that's also available on the page that tells me whether or not the item's on clearance or whether it's a new shoe. We've also got a slicer in here where I can manipulate the price range that I'm interested in, and then a couple statistics around the minimum, maximum, and average price range along with the histogram. So very simple report layout there. I'm gonna go ahead, we'll start a new dashboard page or a new report page, and we'll delete the one that's there before, and we'll also get rid of the data set here. So those are gone. Let's head on over to the web page. So I'm going to go to Tennis Warehouse to get some of this data. Huge tennis fan, especially a big fan of Babolat shoes here. So I'm going to try and parse out and scrape as much data as I can about the shoes, but also at the same time limiting it to something that's manageable for you guys to learn about. So I'm going to start with the label of the shoe, try and pull this tag in on whether it's a new shoe, a clearance, or as a current item, and then of course the price. So we'll go up here and we'll right click and copy that URL, go back into Power BI, and before we access that data set, we need to go to Options in the File menu and then make sure under Preview Features that New from Web Experience is checked. All right, for me it's checked. If it's not checked for you, check it, click OK. You'll have to restart Power BI. Click the Get Data button and go to the Other Data Sources and choose Web, then click Connect and paste the URL in for that website. So paste it in there and click the OK button. It'll load the page with two tables. We don't want the document table. We want to choose the table that's the name of the page we were looking at. In this case, it was Babolat men's tennis shoes. You'll notice that page was 3 columns. So I've got 3 columns of data in here, and it was roughly 6 rows long with an additional row, a 7th row that just had 2 items in it. So that's what it's going to pull in its initial data pull from that page. I don't want that data, so what I want to be able to do is provide my own examples. So we'll say Add Table Using Examples, and we'll click that button. We'll get a preview of the page and an area to start showing Power BI what my example looks like so it can learn how to parse out that page. So let's go ahead and rename this column. I'm just going to double click it and type in shoe. And then in the first cell, I'm going to start typing the name of the first shoe. So it's called Babolat SFX3, and it is the all-court white, black, silver shoe. So I'll select it, hit enter twice. Based on that first example, it wasn't able to parse out any examples, so we'll give it a second one. And we'll do Babolat. It's also an SFX3, but it's the all-court diva version. So we'll choose that one and hit enter, and it was able to find one more by example in gray there, and that's the third shoe in that first row. Third column, first row. Let's give it one more example and see if it can learn. So this shoe is called the Babolat Jet Mach 2 AC, and it's blue and black. So that's the shoe there, and we'll hit enter twice, and you'll notice it found all 20 of the shoes once I gave it that third example. All right, the shoe isn't the only thing that I want. I also want the price of the shoe. So we'll add a new column and we'll call it price. Now, the interesting thing to note on the shoe price is that it's blue, but it's also red in some cases. So we want to make sure that the example can pull tags, HTML tags, regardless of what color font it's in. So the first shoe is $100, so we need to make sure the price matches the shoe example that we're giving it. So we're going to say $100 there. The decimal point and the zeros are important. It didn't find it on the first example, so we'll do the next one. It also happens to be $100. And then it was able to find the third one like it did before, but now I'm going to go down one more row and we're going to choose the $140 shoe. It's an expensive shoe. And do that one as an example, and then you'll see it was able to find all 20 of the shoes and their price. Now, same thing, I'm making sure this one that's $100 in red gets picked up, and this is this Babolat Wimbledon one, and it picked it up just fine. The last item that I want is the tag here that's new or clearance, and so I'm going to just call this tag, for lack of a better phrase to put in there, and the first set of shoes on this page are new, and so is that last one. So the third example that we did. So we'll start typing in new. It didn't pick them up. We'll do new again. Still didn't pick them all up, and we'll do new on this one since that was also part of the new category. And there it starts to fill it in. So the Mach 2 is new. The Wimbledon one was new. And then the next one was clearance, which it is. And so is the clearance one in this first column of that row. Some of them don't have a tag at all, which is what's happening here. And some of them are clearance at the end, which looks good. Now, when we did this, we lost a couple of the tags around the price. So you notice that this Babolat Propulse Fury AC white Wimbledon shoe, which was clearance, lost the tag, and it's happening on the ones that are colored red is what you'll notice, because the next one isn't there either. And that's going to happen. As you're scraping data, it's difficult for it to learn by the examples and be able to parse everything out. So we need to redo this one and tell it that this was also a $100 shoe. And now you'll see that it filled in the rest of them. I only had to give it one example of that red price tag that's here, and it's able to do it. All right, everything else looks good. Oh, so that's sort of the nuances of giving it examples and then having it being able to parse out each of the items within the table. And, it's a little bit of a balancing act in getting it to understand what the examples look like. Key things to look for are differences in the font text color, if it's italicized or bolded, different layouts. Those are important things visually to look at behind the scenes, that maybe the HTML tag is different and it needs another example. All right, let's go ahead and click OK. And I don't need this first table anymore, so we can remove that table. I'm really only interested in the custom table that I added. So let's load that table into Power BI. And when it loads in, it's just going to load with the URL name that was in there. I could rename it, but I'm not going to do that right now. We'll just leave it the way that it is. And we'll start to build out a little of what this is going to look like. I'm going to do a table to start with. So we'll pull a table in, and I'll just pull in the shoe and the price and the tag to begin with, and see what it looks like. And it's, it looks decent. What we notice in here is that the tag is missing some values, and to get rid of those or to improve the quality of that data, I'm going to go into Edit Queries, pull up Power Query here, and we're going to go to the tag column and go to Transform and choose Replace Values. And I'm going to enter NULL for null in lowercase, and the value that I want it to change the null to is current, to let people know that that's the current shoe. It's not new and it's not on clearance. All right, that's one thing we're going to do. The other item I want to do is I want to get the shoes model. So the brand is Babolat, but I want to know if it's an SFX3, if it's a Propulse, if it's a Jet Mach. I really want to know what type of shoe that it is. Maybe we'll just leave it at Jet. So to add that, we're going to go in and add a column from examples, but I'm going to choose the shoe column, and we say column from examples from my current column. All right, and then I'm going to come over to this new column that was added. We're going to call this model, and then I'll start doing an example of what I want it to do. So this is an SFX3. All right, so we'll leave it like that. And I actually only had to do one example and it was able to pick up the rest of them. A propulse, a jet, very easy. So I like that. We'll click OK. It's going to add it as a new column. And then we'll go over to the Home tab and click Close and Apply. And it will add that column to my data set here and make the change to the tag where I told it that I wanted it to be current as one of the options. And we'll go ahead and drag the model over there. Okay, I might rearrange where the model is. I might want it to show up next to the shoe, and then maybe the tag and then the price last. That looks fine. And then from here we can add very simple things like an additional slicer that I want to see the price. When I start moving the slicer, I notice that it's doing it with a lot of decimal points. I don't want that, so we'll choose price and go over to the modeling tab and change it to 0 decimal points. None of them have prices after the cents after the decimal point. So that looks a little bit better, and just make sure it's working. Good. That looks good. Again, do another slicer if I wanted to on the tag. So if I only wanted to look at clearance items or current or the new set that's in, that's good. And then the last piece, I'm adding a histogram just because I want to see the distribution of the current and the new models because it's sort of fascinating. So I'm going to import from Marketplace, and we're going to type in histogram. I see it there, but I could just type in histogram here, and there's a histogram chart, and click Add. All right, and the histogram chart appears here, and I'll add it to the canvas, and we're just going to do the price of the shoe. So the values that we have are the price, and it's what I really like about it is it automatically creates the bins or the buckets that we would normally have to create if we were doing this manually. So the distribution of the shoes here, I don't have a large sample, so don't expect a normal distribution in the set, and it may not be normally distributed. It just depends on how the data is, how they're pricing their shoes. But most of them fall into this middle category here of 104 to 122 and a quarter. What's fascinating is if I select a different choice. So if I click New, the newer ones, again, this data set isn't huge, but happen to be cheaper than where the current set falls, where the current set has more. And the clearance ones are distributed just at the end. So kind of fascinating when you look at the data and see how it's laid out. And we could also do some cards in here where we could look at the average price. If I pull it in, this is what I had on the final dashboard. Choose the average price. For clearance is 103, for current it's 114, and for new shoes it's 113. So the new shoes on average are $1 less than the current ones, and not all that much more expensive than the clearance items. So very quick build of the dashboard here based on the web data that we were able to pull from the Tennis Warehouse website. Key takeaways are in the examples that you're producing inside the Power Query Editor, those have to be very precise. It may take 2 or 3 of them for it to determine what the value is actually going to be, and pay attention visually to the differences in the HTML formats. Like if it's a different color font, if it's italicized, all of that will matter on whether it's able to pick up the differences. The other thing that you notice is when I added the tag and examples there, some of the prices went null at that point, even though it picked it up the first time. So pay attention to that as you're adding subsequent columns and making sure it didn't remove or null out some of the previous values that it discovered. So go ahead and go at it. Please leave some comments down below. Let me know what you think, if there's anything else I can expand on. And as always, subscribe to the channel for more content. Thanks.